Koto and Kujo, in front of the 6 Amami sisters, slid the black diamond ring symbolizing the head of the family onto my ring finger. She stood on her tiptoes, pressing a burning kiss against my lips, then turned to sneer at the women kneeling in the rain. He is my king now. You don't even have the right to look up at him. Welcome to Apex System, an exciting story is about to begin. A heavy expulsion agreement was slammed violently onto the cold marble floor, the papers scattering everywhere. Sign it. Starting tonight, you are no longer a member of our Amami family. We are taking back the Amami surname. Get lost and go back to that orphanage for the magicless, Yori Jinguji. The eldest sister, Shirori Amami's voice was as cold as if it had been soaked in ice water. Dressed in a sharply tailored custom business suit, she looked down at me from her superior height. Her eyes, which should have been filled with familial warmth, now held nothing but blatant disgust. Outside the window, a torrential downpour was lashing Tokyo. The gale-force winds drove the rain to beat frantically against the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of the Amami Manor, producing a series of heart-palpitating thuds. In the center of the brilliantly lit hall, my biological younger brother, Ryunosuke Amami, who had only recently been brought back to the family, leaned weakly into the arms of our second eldest sister, Chizuru Amami. His arm was wrapped in thick bandages, through which traces of fresh blood were seeping. Eldest sister, please don't blame Brother Yoru. Ryunosuke's face was pale, tears still clinging to the corners of his eyes, his voice trembling with perfect precision. It's my fault. I shouldn't have suddenly returned and taken his place. That spirit-gathering array core crystal worth 10 million. I might have really broken it by accident. Brother Yoru has no magic power. How could he possibly shatter something so hard? On the surface, these words seemed to be pleading on my behalf, but in reality, every syllable was a calculated strike to the heart. Sure enough, the most hot-tempered of them all, the fourth sister Ruka Tenkai, violently drew the magic sword from her waist. The blade pointed directly at the tip of my nose, the sword she even slicing off a stray lock of hair from my forehead. Ryunosuke, you are just too kind. Besides this trash, who envies your S-rank bloodline? Who else in this house would sabotage the spirit-gathering array? He just wants to kill you. Exactly. A parasite who can't even cast low-level magic. Our Tenkai family has raised you for 10 years for nothing, and you actually dare to lay a murderous hand on Ryunosuke? The fifth sister, Saya Tenkai, fiddled with the miniature psionic computer in her hand, sneering without even looking up. I stood silently in place, my gaze sweeping across the 6 women before me one by one. The eldest sister Shiori, CEO of the Tenkai conglomerate. The second sister Chizuru, the empire's youngest chief alchemical physician. The third sister Yukino, a national-level ice ability idol. The fourth sister Ruka, security captain and high-ranking magic swordsman. The fifth sister Saya, a top-tier psionic hacker. And the sixth sister Mio, a genius high school summoner. Over these past 10 years, I have poured my heart and soul into the Tenkai family. They believe themselves to be gifted geniuses, unaware that it was I who stayed up late into the night fixing the riddled business proposals for the eldest sister's company. It was I who secretly reconciled the fatal mana conflicts in the second sister's alchemy formulas. And it was even I who used my own soul power to sustain the defensive barrier protecting this manor, and maintaining their lifeline day and night. The reason I cannot use magic is that I have spent all my energy nurturing this pack of ungrateful wolves. And now, simply because of a clumsy lie from this biological younger brother who possesses a so-called S-rank bloodline, they have completely erased 10 years of my dedication, casting me out like a piece of rotting trash. At that moment, a crisp mechanical notification sound suddenly echoed from the depths of my mind. Ding! It has been detected that the host's emotional bond with the Tenkai family has been completely severed. The All Things Analysis system has deactivated stealth mode and begun 100% deep binding. The Tenkai family psionic network node has been disconnected. The host's mana suppression has been lifted. Feeling the long-lost, ocean-like vast power beginning to awaken within my body, I couldn't help but let a self-deprecating sneer curl at the corner of my mouth. 10 years. The system has finally judged that I have fully repaid the Tenkai family for the kindness of their adoption all those years ago. Seeing that I not only failed to kneel and beg for mercy but actually laughed, the sixth sister, Mio, furrowed her brows in disgust. What are you laughing at? Are you just giving up now that your schemes have been exposed? You're disgusting. Take your trash and get out of my sight, now! Brother Yoru, if you admit your mistakes to everyone now, I'll beg my sisters to let you stay at the manor as a gardener. Ryunosuke was still there, diligently performing his nauseating green tea act. I couldn't be bothered to spare him another glance. I bent down to pick up the expulsion agreement from the floor, pulled a fountain pen from my pocket, and without a moment's hesitation, signed the name, Jinguji Yoru, in a single, fluid motion. Then, I decisively pulled off the Platinum Clan crest ring that represented my status in the Amami family, letting it hit the marble tabletop with a sharp clang. As you wish. From this moment on, I, Jinguji Yaru, have absolutely no connection to the Amami family. I casually tossed the agreement at Shiori's feet, turned around, and walked toward the main gate. Stop right there! Shiori shouted coldly. Do you really think that once you walk out that door, you can keep living the pampered life of a young master like before? Without the protection of the Amami family, a magicless waste like you won't last a single day in Tokyo. I'm warning you, when you're starving to death on the streets, don't expect any pity from us. I came to a halt and tilted my head slightly, casting a cold glance at her from the corner of my eye as if looking at a complete stranger. Shiori, remember what you said today. I hope that in the future, when the Amami family's barriers collapse and your funding is cut off, you'll still be able to maintain that high and mighty attitude. With that, I ignored the insults and roars coming from behind me and pushed open the heavy oak doors without a hint of regret. The gale swept in with icy rain, instantly drenching my shirt. Yet I felt no chill at all, only an unprecedented sense of relief. The era belonging to me, Jinguji Yoru, has only just begun from the moment I stepped into this rainy night. Cold rain slid down my cheeks, splashing onto the reflective asphalt of the Tokyo streets. I didn't even have an umbrella, and I was already soaked to the bone, yet my stride was lighter than it had been on any day in the past 10 years. Having lost the so-called protection of the Amami family, I felt not the slightest bit of trepidation. Instead, the air seemed filled with the sweet taste of freedom. On my retina, a pale blue holographic system panel was constantly pulsing with streams of data. The All Things Analysis system is functioning normally. Detected that the massive mana accumulated within the host's body over the past 10 years is rapidly unsealing. Current mana rating, surpassing S-class limits, reaching the unknown EX class. Warning, detected that the defensive barrier of Tenkai Manor, 10 kilometers behind, has lost the support of the host's mana. The defense index is plummeting at a rate of 5% per minute. I closed the system panel without even bothering to look back. The core code of the Tenkai family's pride, their psionic network, had long been rewritten by me countless times. Without my daily covert repairs, the mana turbulence beneath Tokyo alone would be enough to turn that barrier into a sieve riddled with holes. Let them court death however they please. None of this has anything to do with me anymore. Just as I was about to find a hotel for a hot shower, blinding high beams suddenly tore through the heavy curtain of rain. With the low, violent roar of engines, 8 pitch-black, custom-built armored luxury cars glided into the empty street like ghosts, completely sealing off the intersection where I stood in a highly oppressive formation. The car doors swung open in unison. Dozens of bodyguards in black suits, wearing the purple iris family crest, filed out. Their movements were perfectly synchronized. Even the sound of their footsteps hitting the puddles merged into a single, heavy thud. Amidst the torrential rain and howling wind, these elite guards lined up in 2 rows and bowed deeply at a 90-degree angle toward me. That purple iris crest, in the shadow world of Japan and the entire globe, represented only one name, the Kujo family, a top-tier conglomerate controlling assets exceeding 10 trillion yen. The rear door of the extended luxury car in the very center was slowly pulled open. A slender leg, balanced on a black stiletto heel, stepped out first. Then, a noble goddess, appearing as if she had emerged from the dark of night, stepped into the curtain of rain. Koton Kujo. The sole heir to the Kujo Zaibatsu, the legendary cold and ruthless ice queen. Today, she wore a perfectly tailored burgundy haute couture evening gown, her fair skin dazzlingly white against the night. Her beauty was enough to topple nations, and her purple eyes held an arrogance that looked down upon all living things. Shockingly, she pushed away the black umbrella offered by her bodyguard, allowing the icy rain to soak her expensive gown and her cascading black hair as she walked straight toward me. Koton stopped in front of me, those purple eyes, which seemed capable of piercing through one's very soul, staring intently at me. She looked at my cheap, wet shirt and my somewhat disheveled appearance. Yet, instead of the slightest hint of disdain typical of the elite, her eyes gradually welled with a near-manic fervor and heartache. In the next second, under the incredulous and horrified gazes of the dozens of bodyguards surrounding them, this high and mighty Chable Queen knelt down without hesitation, dropping one knee onto the asphalt road slick with mud and rainwater. "Miss Koton!" Several bodyguards cried out in shock, only to be frozen in place by a single, ice-cold glare from her. She tilted her head up, holding out an exquisite black velvet box with both hands and slowly opening it before me. Inside lay a primitive ring set with a top-tier black diamond. "Lord Jinguji." Koton's voice trembled slightly in the rainy night, carrying an excitement she had suppressed for a long time. "Those blind fools of the Amami family have finally released a god like you back into freedom. You sustained them for 10 years with your EX rank mana and unparalleled talent, only to be treated like this. I truly feel it was beneath you. I raised an eyebrow slightly, not at all surprised that she knew my background. 3 years ago, when the Kujo Zaibatsu faced a devastating psionic network attack from the International Hacker Alliance, I had used the All Things Analysis system to resolve the crisis for them on a whim. Since then, this clever woman had been watching me from the shadows like a lurking hunter. So, you brought such a massive entourage to find a piece of trash who was just kicked out of his house. Are you here to mock me? I looked down at her, my voice calm. No, I am here to welcome my king. Koton's gaze was so intense it seemed as if it could evaporate the torrential rain. She held up the ring representing the supreme power of the Kujo family. The Tiahai family mistook a pearl for a fisheye. That is their own path to ruin. I, Koton Kujo, am willing to offer the 10 trillion yen assets of the Kujo Zaibatsu as my dowry. Please wear this head of house ring. From this day forward, you are the new king of the Kujo family and my only husband. Should anyone dare to slight you in the least, the Kujo family will ensure they have no place to be buried. Looking at her exquisite yet determined face in the rain, I smiled. I extended my right hand, letting Koton slide that cold black diamond ring onto my ring finger. The fit was perfect, as if it were born to be worn on my hand. I accept this dowry. I reached out, grasped her wrist, and pulled her from the mud into my arms. Now take me home. Koton's face blossomed into a smile of such breathtaking beauty that it seemed to eclipse the world itself. Pressing herself tightly against my chest, her voice was soft and seductively melodic. As you command, my lord patriarch. Under the respectful gaze of a crowd of black-clad bodyguards, I held Kujo Koton close as we stepped into the warmth of the luxury car. As the doors slammed shut, the motorcade let out a roar into the rainy night, speeding toward the Kujo estate. Behind us, the crumbling mess of the Amami family was left to face its irreversible destruction in the wind and rain. Less than 3 days after leaving the Amami household, the persistent rain that had plagued Tokyo for days miraculously vanished. I leaned back in the pure black leather chair, a symbol of supreme power, at the top floor of the Kujo Zaibatsu headquarters, overlooking the bustling Tokyo metropolitan area through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows. Kujo Koton, dressed in a form-fitting black professional suit and skirt, walked to my side with elegant strides in her high heels, gently placing a cup of perfectly tempered black tea by my hand. My lord, just as you anticipated, the Amami family is on the verge of collapse. A smirk of blatant mockery played on Koton's lips as she respectfully handed me an encrypted tablet. I took the tablet, my fingertips sliding lightly across the screen, and a holographic projection immediately unfolded in the air. The display was split in two. The image on the left showed the boardroom at the Amami Zaibatsu headquarters. The eldest sister, Shiori Amami, usually known for her calm and efficient demeanor, stood before the head seat with a livid expression. Her chest heaved violently as she slammed a thick stack of documents into the face of the executive sitting opposite her. 3 days! In just 3 days, 30 billion in market value has evaporated, and the company's capital chain is completely broken. What on earth have you useless fools been doing? Shiori's furious roar echoed through the audio feed. I took a shallow sip of my black tea, my gaze calm. I knew the reason for Shiori's fury all too well. That 50 billion yen joint development project for the North Sea Psionic, or was the most critical lifeline for the Amami conglomerate this year. She had always believed that perfect business proposal was the hard work of her own department, unaware that it was the result of me staying up for 3 consecutive nights, using the All Things Analysis system to patch all 137 fatal data loopholes. Just yesterday, without my secret protection, Shiori confidently took the original, unedited proposal to negotiate with the Northern European giants. The result was predictable. The other party's auditing team took only 10 minutes to identify a severe error in the core mana conversion rate. They didn't just tear up the letter of intent on the spot. They also initiated an anti-dumping investigation. The Amami conglomerate stock plummeted by 30% in a single day, and banks even began freezing some of their assets. The crisis of bankruptcy now hung over her head like the sword of Damocles. Shiori probably still hasn't figured out why her previously invincible business empire suddenly became so riddled with holes, I remarked coldly. Koton let out a soft laugh and reached out with her fair fingers to tap on the surveillance feed on the right. While the eldest sister is at her wit's end, the fifth sister's situation isn't much better. Look at the state of the Amami manor now. The scene shifted to the underground core server room of the Tenkai residence. The fifth sister, Tenkai Saya, the genius who prided herself on being the empire's top psionic hacker, was currently slumped in her computer chair, her hair disheveled. Her eyes were bloodshot, and her hands struck the virtual keyboard with such frantic speed they became a blur of afterimages. However, no matter how hard she tried, the hundreds of holographic screens surrounding her continued to flash with piercing red alerts. Warning, underlying logic code missing. Warning, massive necrosis of psionic network nodes. Defense barrier output power has dropped to 15%, facing total collapse. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. I built this defense network myself. How could so much unpassable gibberish suddenly appear? Saya clutched her hair in despair, her voice carrying a distinct sob. Watching her collapse, I felt nothing but pity. The defense network Saya took such pride in was like a magnificent castle built on sand, and my vast EX-rank mana was the steel and concrete that reinforced its foundation. Without the daily automated calculations and mana infusions from the All Things Analysis system, this network couldn't even withstand the most basic underground mana turbulence in Tokyo. By the way, my lord, Koton seemed to recall something amusing, leaning down as her warm breath brushed past my ear. That biological younger brother of the Amami family who is praised to the heavens, Amami Ryunosuke, gave them quite a gift yesterday. Oh? What kind of trouble did he stir up this time? I raised an eyebrow slightly. Koton covered her mouth and chuckled softly. That genius younger brother with the S-rank bloodline saw his sisters panicking and took it upon himself to activate the forced extraction circle of the underground spirit vein, hoping to use his own mana to repair Saya's network. As it turns out, his mana control is incredibly crude. He caused a direct short-circuit backlash in the spirit vein, instantly frying 70% of the Amami family's core servers. The hardware loss alone amounts to 50 million, not to mention the top-secret data that was lost. Hearing this, I finally couldn't help but burst out laughing. Ryunosuke certainly didn't disappoint me. This piece of trash they treated like a treasure possessed truly staggering destructive power. I casually closed the holographic projection and tossed the tablet onto the desk. The Amami family skyscraper was collapsing at a speed visible to the naked eye, and this was merely the beginning. Let them cause whatever scene they want. I stood up, allowing Koton to thoughtfully straighten the collar of my suit. The members of the Amami family should be attending tonight's Imperial Elite Charity Gala, right? Yes, Koton replied submissively. Shiori is currently in desperate need of funds to keep things afloat. She will almost certainly bring Ryunosuke to the gala to search for new investors. Very well. I looked at my reflection in the floor-to-ceiling window, my gaze gradually turning cold. Then let us go and see what kind of glamorous facade the Amami family can still put on in front of everyone now that they have lost me. In the rooftop ballroom of the Imperial Grand Hotel, massive crystal chandeliers cast a brilliant glow, and melodious classical music flowed amidst the clinking of wine glasses. Dressed in a custom-made dark-patterned suit handcrafted overnight by the Kujo family's head tailor, I stepped slowly into the venue with Kujo Koton, clad in a black backless evening gown, resting her arm in mine. The moment the attendant loudly announced the arrival of the head of the Kujo family, the boisterous ballroom fell into a brief, dead silence. The gazes of countless celebrities and power players converged on us in unison, filled with undisguised shock and awe. Koton leaned slightly against my shoulder, her haughty gaze sweeping across the room before coming to a rest in a secluded corner. She lowered her voice and chuckled softly. My lord, look over there. I followed her gaze and, as expected, saw the members of the Amami family. The eldest sister, Shiori Amami, was wearing a slightly dated evening gown. Despite her exquisite makeup, she couldn't hide the deep exhaustion and anxiety in her eyes. Holding a glass of champagne, she followed behind several conglomerate presidents with a humble posture, attempting to use hollow words to describe a glorious future for the Amami family that no longer existed. Beside her, Ryunosuke Amami, dressed in a flamboyant white tuxedo, was fiddling with his hair out of boredom. Seeing me being ushered into the venue like a star surrounded by moons, Ryunosuke's expression instantly turned hideous, his eyes burning with intense jealousy. He gritted his teeth, whispered something to Shiori, and then, picking up a glass of red wine, walked straight toward the display platform in the center of the banquet hall. It happened to be the charity appreciation segment of the dinner. Ryunosuke strode onto the stage, snatched the microphone from a waiter, and pointedly cleared his throat, drawing the attention of the entire room. Seniors, to support the Empire's charitable causes tonight, I, Ryunosuke Tenkai, have specially brought a family heirloom. As he spoke, he gestured for his attendant to bring forward an ornate brocade box. When the box was opened, it revealed an ancient goblet emitting a faint blue glow, its surface swirling with intricate magical inscriptions. A sudden wave of gasps rippled through the crowd. My God, could that be the legendary Starfall magic chalice from the Elven Court of the First Era? That abundant magical fluctuation, it's definitely the real deal. It's worth at least 50 million. Listening to the surrounding praise, Ryunosuke lifted his chin in smug exultation. His gaze swept across the crowd and landed provocatively on me. This Starfall magic chalice is a supreme treasure that I spent 50 million and endured countless hardships to recover for the Tenkai family. Unlike certain parasites who have zero magical talent and only know how to hide behind women and live off them, even if he puts on dragon robes, he can't hide the cheapness and baseness in his bones. As soon as these veiled insults were uttered, the audience erupted into an uproar. Shiori's expression shifted drastically below the stage. Though she loathed me, she knew that openly provoking the Kujo family in such a setting was nothing short of sheer stupidity. Koton's eyes instantly turned cold, and she was about to step forward to lash out, but I pressed down on her hand, a playful, mocking sneer curling at the corners of my mouth. On my retina, the pale blue system panel had already automatically expanded. Ding! All things analysis system activated. Analysis target: Forged Starfall Magic Cup, material composition, 80% modern industrial synthetic resin, 15% low-level flame marsh frog blood, 5% fluorescent powder. True value, 300. Status: the crudely made internal mana circuits are collapsing. It is on the verge of shattering upon any slight vibration. Ryanosuke, I said, pushing through the crowd and walking unhurriedly toward the display stand. My voice wasn't loud, yet it carried clearly across the entire banquet hall. Are you certain this so-called treasure of yours is worth 50 million? Jinguji Yoru, stop putting on airs. You're a useless failure who can't even perform the lowest level appraisal magic. What do you know about antiques? Ryanosuke roared, sounding like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. This has been verified by the Tenkai family's chief appraiser himself. Is that so? I let out a cold sneer, extending a finger to point at the seemingly mysterious inscription at the base of the wine cup. The elves of the First Era worshipped nature. Their inscriptions emphasized the circulation and eternal flow of mana. Yet, in the mana recovery array at the bottom of your cup, the third rune is an inverted blazing fire curse. Forcing a fire element rune onto a water element magic tool doesn't just violate the most fundamental laws of alchemy, it makes this a highly dangerous, low-quality bomb. The moment I finished speaking, Mr. Howard, the Empire's chief master appraiser who was an invited guest at the banquet, immediately pushed his way forward. He pulled out a high-powered psionic magnifying glass, and after just one look, his expression changed completely. Absurd. This is utterly preposterous. Master Howard's beard trembled with rage as he pointed at Ryanosuke and lashed out. Such a crude forgery could be spotted by a first-year student at the Magic Academy. This isn't the Starfall Magic Cup at all. This blue glow was forcibly injected using a mixture of foul flame marsh frog blood and modern fluorescent powder. As if to confirm Master Howard's words, the goblet suddenly let out a sharp cracking sound under the turbulence of the conflicting internal mana. Crack. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the $50 million goblet shattered directly into hundreds of resin shards. A nauseating stench, a mix of rotting mud and dead frogs, instantly filled the entire exhibition stand. No. This is impossible. How could this be a fake? Ryanosuke recoiled from the stench, stumbling back and falling onto the shard-covered display stand. His face was deathly pale, making him look like a complete clown. The surrounding socialites covered their noses one after another, their eyes filled with disdain and mockery. So the Amami family isn't just on the brink of bankruptcy. Their character is just as low, actually using a few hundred yen fake for a charity scam. That Ryanosuke Amami is a total incompetent. He had the nerve to mock the head of the Kujo family just now. He really brought this humiliation on himself. Below the stage, Shiori's face was now ashen. She watched in despair as the bank presidents, who had previously shown some interest in her, turned and walked away as if fleeing a plague. The last shred of the Amami family's credibility had completely vanished due to Ryanosuke's foolish actions. I looked down condescendingly at Ryanosuke, who was slumped on the floor. I didn't even bother to spare him a single word of mockery. I simply turned, took Koton's hand, and left the farce of an exhibition hall with the composure of a monarch amidst the awestruck gazes of the crowd. For the Amami family, who had lost me, tonight's public humiliation was merely the threshold of hell. In the main hall of the Kujo Manor late at night, it was so quiet that only the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock could be heard. I sat on a comfortable velvet sofa, swirling a half-glass of amber whiskey in my hand. The all things analysis system on my retina was flashing a blinding red light, and a piercing alarm echoed in my mind. Warning, a catastrophic magical turbulence has appeared in the spiritual veins of Western Tokyo. Source location, the forbidden ritual circle in the third basement level of the Amami Manor, the Abyss Spirit Gathering Array. Status, the seal has been violently breached. Dark attribute leyline toxins are erupting in full force. I narrowed my eyes slightly and, through a backdoor I had reserved in the system, projected the surveillance footage from the core of the Amami family's basement directly into the air. In the footage, Ryunosuke Amami, having endured the ultimate humiliation at the banquet, stood in the center of the abyss spirit-gathering array like a gambler who had lost everything, his eyes bloodshot. He was clearly attempting to forcibly extract high-level mana from this ancient formation to exchange for massive funds on the black market, hoping to plug the hole of the Amami family's impending bankruptcy, and salvage the pride he had lost in front of his sisters. That trash Jinguji-yoru, who can't even cast a fireball, occupied this array for 10 years without an issue. I'm a genius with S-rank bloodline, how could I possibly fail to control it? Ryunosuke roared with a distorted face, recklessly slashing his wrist to frantically pour his blood and mana into the array's core. However, his crude and disorganized mana was like a drop of ice water thrown into boiling oil. The magic circle, which had been silent for a decade, let out a deafening wail. A split second later, violent magic power as black as ink, laced with lethal leyline toxins, transformed into a tornado and surged toward the sky. Ryunosuke didn't even have time to scream before the massive recoil sent him flying like a ragdoll, slamming him hard against the wall. He huddled in the corner, trembling uncontrollably, without even the strength to stand. Accompanied by the piercing shriek of a maximum-level alarm, the heavy blast-proof doors of the basement were violently blown open. The third sister of the Amami family, Miwa Amami, who oversees the military and magitech units, and the fourth sister, Rin Amami, the chief alchemist, rushed in with expressions of sheer terror. Ryunosuke! You idiot, what on earth have you done? This is the active volcano that the first head of the family strictly forbade anyone from touching. Miwa screamed. Without hesitation, she raised her staff embedded with high-grade wind spirit stones, instantly deploying an 8-fold emerald defensive barrier in an attempt to suppress the black storm within the center of the magic circle. Rinya, her face pale, pulled out a dozen bottles of expensive, high-purity neutralizing potions from her robes and smashed them desperately against the edge of the magic circle, attempting to carve out a sealing matrix. However, they were far too naive. Without the refinement of my EX rank mana and the precise intervention of the all things analysis system, this leyline resentment, accumulated over hundreds of years, was simply not something they could contend with. Crack! Sustaining for less than 3 seconds, Miwa's pride, the 8-fold barrier, shattered like glass. The violent black magic surged up her staff like a venomous serpent. The high-level magical artifact in her hands instantly exploded into powder, and scorched black backlash markings, looking as if they were burned by fire, rapidly spread up her arms. Ah! Miwa let out a shrill scream and collapsed powerlessly to her knees, her delicate face completely contorted by the intense agony. The situation for the fourth sister, Rin, was even worse. Her alchemy matrix was completely torn apart, and her mana core suffered a heavy blow. She violently spat out a large mouthful of blood mixed with visceral fragments, collapsing beside Miwa like a heap of mud. At this critical moment of life and death, the underlying runes of the magic circle revealed their true form due to the overload. Under the blinding red light, Miwa and Rin struggled to open their eyes. A moment later, their pupils instantly contracted to the size of pinheads from sheer shock. At the very center of the magic circle, which was saturated with dark red toxins, the position of the absolute death zone, designed to bear the full force of all magical backlash, was a dense network of repair runes emitting a soft blue glow. Those runes were intricate and precise, perfectly aligning with every violent mana node. The stone slab at that spot had long since been stained a dark, murky brown, soaked through by years of accumulated blood. Those were my unique system runes. How is this possible? Ignoring the blood at the corner of her mouth, Rin reached out a trembling hand toward the sacrificial spot, her voice filled with profound despair and terror. For the past 10 years. Has it always been night sitting in that position? Myo stared blankly at those blue magic patterns, her mind suddenly flashing back to countless nights over the past 10 years when I would emerge from the basement, exhausted and pale. Back then, she would always look down on me, mocking my low mana levels and sneering at me for being a parasite who could only survive on the Tenkai family's charity. It wasn't until this very moment that they realized the bone-chilling truth. The gentle, pure spiritual vein mana they had absorbed over the past decade was no divine blessing at all. It was the result of Jinguji-yoru sitting alone in that hellish formation core every night, using his own body as a filter, swallowing every drop of lethal toxin and backlash to refine it for them, bit by bit. What have we done? Myo looked at her ruined arms, then at her so-called S-rank genius brother in the corner who did nothing but cause trouble, as tears mixed with cold sweat rolled down her face in heavy droplets. Intense remorse felt like a pair of invisible hands, tightening around their throats. They finally realized that the Tenkai family had not only personally driven away a peerless deity who had been silently protecting them, but had also welcomed back a harbinger of doom who would only push them into the abyss. I watched their miserable state on the screen, weeping bitterly, desperate and broken, with no trace of pity in my eyes. The show has only just begun, I sneered, draining my glass of whiskey in one gulp. Then, with a light tap in midair, I completely severed the network connection to the Tenkai family's surveillance. Since they chose the abyss, let them struggle in it to their heart's content. The Tokyo night sky was illuminated by a bolt of lightning that tore through the heavens, followed immediately by a torrential downpour that cascaded down like a waterfall. Inside the top-floor study of the Kujo Manor's main building, however, it was as warm as spring. Precious red flame would burn in the fireplace, emitting a faint, soothing aroma. I leaned back on a soft velvet chaise longue, my fingertips idly playing with a stemware glass as the dark red liquid refracted a blurred, dreamy glow through the crystal. Kujo Koton, dressed in a dark red silk nightgown, walked gracefully behind me. She reached out with her fair, tender hands and began kneading my shoulders with just the right amount of pressure. Head of the house. Koton's soft voice drifted through the quiet study, carrying a hint of undisguised mockery. The young ladies of the Amami family have been standing in the rain outside the manor gates for 3 full hours now. Would you like to take a look? I gave a slight nod. Koton snapped her fingers, and the study's massive floor-to-ceiling window instantly transformed into a high-definition holographic projection screen, transmitting the real-time surveillance footage from the manor's main gate. Amidst the howling wind and torrential rain, the 10-meter-high gates of pure black profound iron remained tightly shut. Outside, the eldest sister, Amami Shirori, and the fifth sister, Amami Saya, stood in the muddy puddles, looking utterly disheveled. Shirori, the high and mighty, meticulous career woman of the past, was now soaked to the bone. Her custom-made haute couture suit, worth millions, clung tightly to her body, smeared with filthy mud. Her exquisite makeup had long been washed away by the rain, leaving her pale face a mask of despair and exhaustion. Beside her, Saya looked even more wretched. She was shivering violently, arms wrapped tightly around herself, her eyes filled with an indelible terror. Standing before them were 2 rows of Kujo elite guards, clad in heavy magitech armor and wielding psionic halberds. Like emotionless steel statues, they coldly blocked the Amami sisters from approaching any further. Please, Captain Kuroda, I beg you to show some mercy. Ignoring the roaring gale, Shirori clung to the iron bars of the gate, pleading hoarsely with the captain standing at the front. Let us see Knight. As long as we can see him just once, the Amami family will agree to any conditions. Captain of the guard Kuroda's face was as grim as still water. Even through the curtain of rain, his icy voice pierced through clearly. President Amami, watch your words. Is the Kujo clan head's name something outsiders like you can address so casually? The clan head has already retired for the night and will not see any uninvited guests. Please leave immediately, or we will be forced to take measures to evict you. No! We're not leaving! The fifth sister, Saya, suddenly broke down into hysterical sobs, shaking the iron gate like a madwoman. The network has completely collapsed, and the daily penalties for breach of contract have reached 20 billion. Third and fourth sister are still in the ICU being resuscitated because the magic circle went out of control. They might not even survive. We truly know we were wrong. Without him, the Amami family is truly finished. Listening to her younger sister's cries, Shirori felt the last remnants of her pride and dignity shatter completely in this freezing rainy night. With a heavy thud, she fell to her knees. The once arrogant helm of the Tianhai conglomerate felt her knees buckle, collapsing heavily into the muddy rainwater. Seeing this, Saya knelt down as well. The 2 sisters huddled together in the torrential rain, sobbing uncontrollably. Yi! Please come out and see us! Shirori lifted her head, wailing toward the brightly lit castle deep within the manor, her voice so shrill and sorrowful it was heart-wrenching. Big sister knows she was wrong. We were all blind. We shouldn't have taken your sacrifices for granted, and we shouldn't have kicked you out of the house for that troublemaking fool Ryunosuk. Brother Yi, I'm truly sorry. Saya pressed her forehead into the mud, her voice broken by sobs. My security system was nothing but a joke. It was you who stayed up every night fixing the vulnerabilities for me. I'm sorry, we beg you to come back. Even if it's just to save the lives of third and fourth sister, we'll serve you like slaves. Watching their tear-streaked, undignified figures on the screen, I gently swirled my wine glass, finding that my heart didn't even stir with a single ripple of emotion. Late-coming affection is cheaper than grass. This old proverb feels incredibly ironic at this moment. While I was enduring the agony of ley line toxin erosion in the Tenkai family basement, and while I was staying up late repairing those fatal vulnerabilities for them, What were they doing? They were celebrating around that liar, Ryunosuke Tenkai, plotting how to sweep me, the useless one, out the door. Captain Kuroda looked at the two women kneeling on the ground, a flash of undisguised contempt in his eyes. Ladies, have you come to the wrong place? Doesn't your Tenkai family have a peerless genius with an S-rank bloodline? The magic circles are haywire and the network has crashed. Why not let him handle it? Why come here and soil the floor tiles of the Kujo manor? These words were like a resounding slap across the faces of Shirori and Saya, leaving them dying of shame and resentment, able only to lie on the ground in despair, wailing uncontrollably. Turn it off, it's too noisy. I coldly withdrew my gaze and finished the red wine in my glass in one gulp. Yes, my lord. Koton smiled as she deactivated the holographic projection and drew the heavy velvet curtains, completely shutting out the wind, rain, and those pathetic cries of repentance from the outside world. The past that once stung me is being washed away clean in this relentless downpour. The downfall of the Tenkai family is now irreversible. Outside the manor, the thunderstorm showed no signs of ceasing. Instead, it intensified, with gale-force winds driving the torrential rain to lash violently against the floor-to-ceiling windows. I set my empty wine glass down on the mahogany table and slowly stood up. Although I had just instructed Koton to turn off the surveillance, the all-things analysis system on my retina was continuously flashing data indicators of the Tenkai family's total collapse. Watching the plummeting asset valuations and the rapid drain of the family's fortune, I suddenly changed my mind. My lord, are you retiring for the night? Koton respectfully handed over a warm towel. No, I replied, taking the towel to wipe my hands, my gaze cold as I looked out at the night sky. Since some old debts have decided to present themselves, I must settle them personally. Utterly crushing their last shred of hope is the only perfect farewell to this pathetic past. 2 minutes later, a black custom Maybach glided smoothly through the rainy night, coming to a stop just inside the manor's dark iron gates. An attendant respectfully pulled open the car door and unfurled a large, custom-made solid black umbrella for me. Stepping out in my expensive leather shoes, I walked toward the gates one step at a time through the curtain of rain. As I approached, the heavy 10-meter-high iron gates slowly ground open to both sides with a mechanical roar. Outside, 2 rows of elite guards clad in heavy Magitech armor knelt on one knee in perfect unison, their voices piercing the rainy night like a clap of thunder. Welcome, my lord! Outside the door, Shirori Amami and Saya Amami, who were nearly frozen stiff, jerked their heads up in shock at the commotion. When they caught sight of the familiar face beneath the black umbrella through the blinding white glare of the searchlights, a burst of ecstatic hope, like that of a drowning person grasping at a straw, instantly erupted in their dull, despairing eyes. Yoru! You're finally willing to see us! Shirori seemed to experience a sudden surge of energy. She crawled forward through the mud on all fours, attempting to lunge and grab the hem of my trousers. Before she could get close, Captain Kuroda of the guards planted his psionic halberd firmly into the ground with a cold expression. The powerful wind pressure generated by the impact sent Shirori tumbling back onto the ground. President Amami, please mind your status. Do not soil the family head's clothes with the filth on your hands. Kuroda rebuked her bluntly. I stood silently under the black umbrella, rainwater cascading in a continuous line from the ribs. I looked down coldly at these biological sisters who had once stood so high above me and discarded me like trash, my voice devoid of any warmth. President Amami, to what do I owe the honor of you shouting at the gates of my manor in the dead of night? That businesslike, President Amami, felt like a sharp blade plunging deep into Shiori's heart. Ignoring the mud covering her, she knelt on the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. Yoru, don't call me that. I'm your eldest sister. We were blinded before. We were selfish. Now Miwa and Rin are being tortured to death by magical backlash, and the Amami family's network has completely collapsed. I beg you, for the sake of our shared blood, please come back and save them, okay? Shared blood? I reacted as if I had heard the funniest joke in the world, my lips curling into a mocking sneer. For 10 years, while I was in the basement enduring the erosion of ley line toxins and spitting up black blood to repair the magic circles for you, where were you? You were hosting lavish banquets for that so-called S-rank genius younger brother, discussing how to kick me out like a stray dog once you had stripped me of all my value. Why didn't you mention shared blood back then? Beside her, Saya was crying so hard she could barely breathe. She gripped the iron railings tightly, pleading in despair. Brother Yoru, we truly know we were wrong. Ryunosuke is nothing but a fraud. He understands nothing and has ruined everything. As long as you are willing to return, everything in the Amami family will be yours. You can punish us however you like. Don't flatter yourselves. I interrupted coldly, my gaze sweeping across their pathetic faces like a blade. You aren't repenting at all. You've simply realized that the genius you were so proud of is a fraud, and that the luxury and wealth you depend on are about to vanish into thin air. That's why you've come here to beg. You aren't crying because you lost me. You're crying because you've lost your privileged lives. Shiori and Saya, their most shameful inner truths ruthlessly exposed, turned deathly pale. Unable to utter a single word in rebuttal, they could only slump despairingly into the puddles. I tilted my head slightly, and Koton immediately stepped forward from behind me, handing me a thick stack of documents encased in a waterproof, transparent folder. I didn't come out to see you just to listen to these cheap tears and nonsense. I loosened my grip, letting the folder drop directly into the muddy water in front of Shiori. Open your eyes and take a good look. Shiori reached out with a trembling, frozen hand to pick up the document. With just one glance at the title, she looked as if her soul had been drained away, her very breath coming to a standstill. It was the Kujo Zaibatsu Comprehensive Acquisition and Forced Liquidation Order for the Amami Group. With a daily penalty of 20 billion for breach of contract, plus compensation for heavy metal pollution caused by the Magic Circle's rampage, the Amami family is now burdened with a massive debt exceeding 300 billion. I looked at them, pronouncing their death sentence in the flattest of tones. Just an hour ago, the Kujo Zaibatsu joined forces with the Empire's major banks to buy out all of your debt. The Amami Group's stock has plummeted to the value of scrap paper, and all real estate, magic or veins, and patented technologies under your name have entered forced liquidation proceedings. No. That's impossible. Shiori shook her head desperately, tears mixing with the rain. You can't do this. That is the life's work of generations of the Amami family. It wasn't me who drove the Amami family to ruin. It was your own stupidity and arrogance, and that genius younger brother you personally welcomed back. I shifted my gaze away from them, as if looking at them for even a second longer would taint my eyes. I turned around and walked toward the gates, leaving them with nothing but the sight of my cold and resolute back. Kuroda, notify the police station to clear away the trash at the entrance. Don't let them obstruct the liquidation team's motorcade tomorrow morning. Yes, my lord. Amidst Shiori's piercing screams and Saya's broken, hysterical wailing, the heavy black iron gates slammed shut behind me, forever locking away those years of humiliation and absurdity, along with the downfall of the Amami family, within this cold, torrential downpour. Last night's storm had completely washed away Tokyo's gloom, and the morning sunlight filtered through the massive crystal dome of the Kujo estate, casting dappled golden light across the pure wool carpet. I sat upright on the comfortable sofa in the study, the all things analysis system quietly shimmering with a faint blue glow at the edge of my retina. Koton Kujo gracefully entered the room pushing a silver service cart, pouring me a cup of fragrant Ceylon black tea. My lord, the liquidation team completed all their work early this morning. Koton's voice was soft, yet carried a trace of unquestionable coldness. All of Tenkai Group's assets, magic workshops, and various patented technologies have been fully transferred under our Kujo Zaibatsu. They are now burdened with a massive debt exceeding 300 billion. The Tenkai family has been completely erased from the history of the empire. I picked up my black tea and took a gentle sip, my tone flat. And what about those people? The eldest sister, Shiori Tenkai, and the fifth sister, Saya Tenkai, were evicted by the police department last night. They rushed back to the Tenkai main residence overnight, only to find it had already been sealed by the court. The once lofty daughters of a Zaibatsu are now reduced to wandering the streets under bridge tunnels. Koton lowered her head slightly, a hint of mockery flashing in her eyes. Although the third sister, Mio, and the fourth sister, Rin, barely managed to survive in the ICU, their magic circuits are completely shattered, leaving them as cripples even inferior to ordinary people. As for that genius they pampered, Ryunosuke Tenkai, after failing his attempt to steal a magic circle, he was taken away by black market loan sharks who broke his legs. He will likely spend the rest of his life digging for mana stones in pitch-black underground mines to pay off his debts. The Tenkai family had completely disintegrated, an outcome entirely within my expectations. Without my mana support and the system's secret repairs, that hollow shell, strong only in appearance, needed just a gentle push to crumble into fine dust. Let them suffer slowly in the bitter fruit of their own making. I set down my teacup and slowly stood up. Yes. Koton bowed respectfully, then lightly clapped her hands. Several high-ranking maids entered in single file, carrying ornate trays. Upon the trays lay the supreme ceremonial robes passed down through generations of the Kujo family heads. It was a midnight-colored robe, hand-woven from high-grade eye silk blended with mithril magic-conducting threads, with the Kujo family's emblem of absolute power, the crown of thorns, intricately embroidered in gold thread on the collar and cuffs. Under Koton's meticulous service, I changed into this heavy ceremonial attire. As the final obsidian button was fastened, the person in the mirror was no longer the bullied waste of the Amami family, Jinguji Yaru, but the head of the conglomerate who reigned at the very pinnacle of this empire. Lord Patriarch, everyone is waiting for you. Koton took a half step back, looking up at me with eyes full of undisguised fanaticism and absolute submission. I gave a slight nod and pushed open the heavy double oak doors of the study. Passing through the long and solemn corridor of family history, at the very end lay the coronation hall, the heart of the Kujo estate. As the two 5-meter-high gilded doors slowly slid open to the sound of mechanical rumbling, a wave of solemnity and grandeur washed over me. Inside the hall, hundreds of core executives of the Kujo Zaibatsu, commanders of the magic units, and patriarchs of various vassal families had been waiting for a long time. Dressed in formal attire, they stood in neat rows on both sides of the hall, holding their breath in anticipation. Accompanied by the sound of my footsteps, the entire hall fell into a deathly silence. I walked across the dark red velvet carpet, step by step, toward the head of house throne crafted from pure blood crystal at the end of the hall. With every stride, the true magic within me, once deliberately suppressed by the Tenkai family, was released bit by bit. The all things analysis system operated at full speed under my will, and an invisible spiritual pressure swept across the room like a physical force, causing every high-ranking mage present to feel a tremor originating from the depths of their souls. They finally realized, with a mixture of terror and awe, that this new head of house was by no means a puppet to be manipulated, but a truly unfathomable monster. I came to a halt before the throne, turned around, and looked down imperiously at the crowd below the steps. Koton held a black velvet casket in both hands, slowly walking up the steps toward me before dropping to one knee. She respectfully opened the casket, revealing a dark gold ring inlaid with an abyss magic diamond, the symbol of power passed down through the Kujo family for centuries, which could only be worn by a head of house who had received the absolute recognition of the family's ley lines. I extended my right hand and slowly slid the cold, heavy ring onto my index finger. The moment the ring settled, the system's notification chimed crisply in my mind. Ding! Kujo Zaibatsu Supreme Core token detected. Leyline connection complete. Supreme authority confirmed. The All Things Analysis system has fully merged with the Kujo family's magic network. Currently controlled assets have reached the 10 trillion scale. Following the system's confirmation, the abyss magic diamond on the ring suddenly erupted with a blinding dark gold light. This radiance surged across the hall floor, instantaneously igniting all hidden high-level defense matrices and mana nodes throughout the Kujo estate. A colossal spiritual pressure soared into the sky, completely shredding the remaining clouds above. Witnessing this magnificent, miracle-like spectacle, all the arrogance, speculation, and doubt within the hall were utterly crushed. We swear our lives and loyalty to the head of the family. Hundreds of elites, who held the empire's economic lifelines and the pinnacle of its military power, knelt on one knee in perfect unison, deeply bowing their once haughty heads. Their respectful shouts echoed through the hall like a tsunami, deafening in their intensity. I sat regally upon the cold throne, lightly stroking the ring on my finger as I looked down at the bowing imperial titans, my lips curling into a cold and disdainful arc. The old dreams of the Amami family have turned to ashes. From this day forward, this world will officially usher in the era of Yorijinguji. The end. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to subscribe, like, share, and comment. Thank you.